Urban Whisper.
Beneath the surface. Brooklyn's streets were alive, pulsating with a raw energy that was both thrilling and overwhelming. Kendra Jenkins navigated through the throngs of people with practiced ease, her steps quick and purposeful. The city had always been her home, its gritty charm a constant in her life. But lately, the familiarity had begun to feel suffocating, the shadows of her past and present weighing heavily on her. As she made her way to the subway, Kendra glanced around, taking in the graffiti-covered walls and the eclectic mix of people that made Brooklyn unique. She loved the diversity, the feeling that anything could happen at any moment. Yet, there was a part of her that longed for something different, something quieter and more predictable. Kendra worked at an art gallery in Manhattan, a world away from the chaos of Crown Heights. The gallery was her refuge, a place where she could immerse herself in beauty and creativity. It was also a place where she could forget, even if just for a few hours, the complexities of her life. Her family was deeply entrenched in the criminal underworld, a legacy she wanted no part of, but couldn't completely escape. As she rode the subway, Kendra's thoughts drifted to her brother Bryce. He had taken over the family's business after their father, Roger, was imprisoned. Bryce was protective, sometimes to the point of being suffocating. He worried about Kendra, about the dangers of their world. She understood his concerns, but she was tired of being treated like she couldn't make her own decisions. Meanwhile, across the East River, Long Island presented a stark contrast to the bustling streets of Brooklyn. The suburbs were quiet, the air filled with the scent of freshly cut grass and blooming flowers. Anthony Johnson's family moved here after Antoine was arrested, to a modest house on a tree-lined street. It was a peaceful place, but Anthony often felt out of sync with his tranquility. Anthony's family had a long history in law enforcement, a legacy that cast a long shadow over his life. His father, Mike, was a retired officer, a man of few words and strong principles. His brother, Antoine, was currently in prison, a painful reality that weighed heavily on the family. Anthony's mother, Emily, was the heart of their home, always trying to keep the peace and maintain a sense of normalcy. Anthony had returned home after graduating university, finding an apartment in Flatbush, uncertain of his path. The expectations of his family loomed large, especially with his brother's situation. There was an unspoken pressure to follow in his father's footsteps to uphold the family's reputation. But Anthony struggled with this, grappling with doubts about the justice system and his place within it. As he walked through the neighborhood, Anthony thought about the complexities of his family. The house felt like a repository of memories, some good and some painful. His brother's imprisonment had shaken their family to its core, raising questions that no one wanted to ask, but everyone thought about. Inside, Emily was preparing dinner, her movements efficient and familiar. "Anthony, can you help set the table?" she called out, her voice warm. "Of course, Mom," Anthony replied, slipping into the routine that had defined his childhood. The kitchen was filled with the comforting aroma of home-cooked food, a stark contrast to the tension that sometimes simmered beneath the surface. Mike entered the room, his face lined with worry. "Had a talk with the lawyer today," he said, settling into a chair. "They're still working on Antoine's appeal. It's a slow process." Anthony set down the plates, avoiding his father's gaze. "Do you think there's a chance?" he asked, keeping his tone neutral. "We have to believe there is," Mike replied, though the doubt was clear in his eyes. Emily looked between them, her expression a mix of hope and concern. "We'll get through this," she said, more to herself than to anyone else. "We always do." Anthony admired his mother's resilience, but he couldn't share her optimism. The system seemed stacked against them, and the odds of overturning Antoine's conviction felt slim. Yet, he knew he had to keep moving forward, to find a way to reconcile his own beliefs with the expectations of his family. Back in Manhattan, Kendra was finishing her day at the gallery. She loved how the space transformed in the evening, the lighting softening the edges of reality, making everything seem more beautiful and serene. The gallery was a place of escape, a sanctuary where she could lose herself in the world of art. As she prepared to leave, Kendra received a message from Bryce. He wanted her to come home early, a request that filled her with a sense of foreboding. She knew what it meant. Another conversation about the family business, about the dangers of their world. Kendra sighed, feeling the weight of her dual existence pressing down on her. She loved her brother, but she resented the life he represented. It was a life she had never chosen, one that had been thrust upon her by circumstances beyond her control. The gallery was her attempt to carve out a space for herself, a world where she could be someone other than the daughter of a crime lord. As the subway carried her back to Brooklyn, Kendra thought about the future. She dreamed of leaving the city, of starting anew in a place where no one knew her family's name. But dreams were easy. Reality was harder. She knew the ties that bound her were not easily broken. Anthony, too, found his thoughts drifting as he drove back to his apartment. The familiar streets of Long Island passed by, each one a reminder of the life he was living and the expectations that came with it. He felt a growing sense of restlessness, a desire for something different, something more meaningful. He thought about his family's legacy, the weight of expectations that had always surrounded him. His father had been a respected officer, a pillar of the community. His brother's incarceration had cast a long shadow over that legacy, raising questions about justice and the nature of truth. As Anthony parked his car, he made a decision. He would seek out something that felt true to him, something that aligned with his values and beliefs. He wasn't sure what that would look like, but he knew he couldn't continue living in the shadows of other people's expectations. Kendra arrived home to find Bryce waiting for her. His expression was serious, his posture tense. "We need to talk," he said, his voice low. Kendra felt a pang of anxiety but nodded, following him into the living room. The room was dimly lit, the weight of the conversation they were about to have already heavy in the air. "What is it?" she asked, trying to keep her voice steady. Bryce looked at her, his eyes hard. "I've been hearing things, Kendra, about you wanting to leave, about you talking to people outside the family." Kendra's heart raced. She had been careful, but she knew how quickly rumors could spread. "I'm just trying to find my own path," she said, choosing her words carefully. Bryce shook his head. "This isn't just about you. It's about all of us. You can't just walk away from the family. It's not that simple." Kendra felt a surge of anger and frustration. "I know it's not simple, but I can't keep living like this, Bryce. I need to have my own life." Bryce's expression softened slightly, but his eyes remained guarded. "I understand that, Kendra, but you need to be careful. The world we're in, it's dangerous, and once you're in, it's hard to get out." Kendra knew he was right, but she couldn't let fear dictate her life. "I'm willing to take that risk," she said firmly. "I can't live in a cage, Bryce." "I won't," Bryce sighed, running a hand through his hair. "Just promise me you'll be careful. That's all I'm asking." Kendra nodded, feeling a mixture of relief and anxiety. She knew this wasn't the end of the conversation, but it was a start. She needed to figure out her next steps, to find a way to live on her own terms. As she went to her room, Kendra's phone buzzed with a message from a friend inviting her to a party next weekend. She smiled, feeling a flicker of excitement. It was a small step toward normalcy, toward a life that felt like her own. Anthony, sitting in his apartment, decided to reach out to some old friends. He needed to reconnect with people who knew him before his family's troubles, people who could help him see beyond the confines of his current life. He wanted to find something, someone, that felt real and true. Both Kendra and Anthony, in their separate worlds, felt the stirrings of change. They were on paths that seemed destined to intersect, though neither could yet see the shape of what was to come. As they navigated their respective lives, they were each searching for something more, something that felt like freedom. If you liked this story, thumbs up and subscribe for more. Also, hit the notification button to get updates on when I upload more stories. Thanks for watching, and be well.